Most men wander the labyrinth of relationships like sailors lost in a dense fog without a compass. They rely on guesswork, react to momentary behaviors, and completely fail to understand the deep currents driving these behaviors. They are baffled by contradictions. They take things personally that have absolutely nothing to do with them. And, saddest of all, they make the same mistakes over and over again, simply because no one taught them to see the structure hidden beneath the surface. Today, we will dispel this fog. We are not here to judge anyone. Our goal is not to accuse or excuse, but to gain clear, practical understanding. We will discard the romantic illusions that keep men in a state of confusion, as well as the cynical anger that only poisons life. What you are about to learn is a fundamental coordinate system, an optic that allows you to see behavioral patterns where chaos once reigned. Pay attention. Take notes if you must. Because once you see this mechanics, you won't be able to unsee it. And be warned, this knowledge is not for comfort. It won't tell you a sweet fairy tale about women being angels sent from heaven or treacherous demons. It will show you reality, complex, structured, and ultimately quite understandable, if you are willing to make the effort to figure it out. The first and most important thing to grasp: personality is not chaos, it is architecture. People act according to templates. These templates are not random. They grow out of psychological configurations formed in early childhood and remain surprisingly stable throughout life. Think of it as an operating system. Biology is the hardware, and personality is the software. And, just as in the world of computers, there is a limited number of types of these operating systems. This means behavior is predictable once you learn to recognize the code. Of course, people are not robots, and 100% accuracy doesn't exist, but there is enough predictability to navigate relationships with a clarity unavailable to most. The system I am about to offer you breaks these patterns down into understandable elements. This is not the only approach to psychology, but it is the most practical. It overlays directly onto the real behavior you observe every day. Every person has what we will call a psychological core, a fundamental orientation that determines their way of interacting with the world. The core almost never changes. It is the basic setting, the factory firmware. But here is where most men lose the thread. The core expresses itself through different roles depending on the context. The same person can seem completely different at work and at home, among friends and among strangers, on a first date and after 10 years of marriage. This is not a lie, and it is not pretending. It is adaptation. Humans are social beings, and we change our presentation depending on the environment. A woman can be a caring mother hen with children, a tough competitor with colleagues, a playful flirt with girlfriends, and a cold statue with strangers. One core, different projections. The mistake men make is trying to guess which of these masks is real and which are fake. The answer is simple. They are all real. They are different facets of the same structure. Your task is to see the core, understand which role you are observing now, and notice the moment of switching. The core manifests most brightly under pressure, when a person experiences stress, fatigue, fear, or is caught off guard. The scenery falls away. Maintaining a role requires energy. When the battery runs low, the essence comes out. Let's break down the main psychological orientations you will encounter. These are pure types. In life, they are often mixed, but knowing the pure forms will help you see the essence in any cocktail. The first orientation is focus on attention. There are people whose psyche is organized around the need to be noticed. Their self-esteem is directly plugged into external attention, like an appliance into a socket. They shine when they are at the center of events and fade when the spotlights go out. This is not vanity in the moral sense. It is a mode of existence. They literally feel alive only when the energy of others flows toward them. In a relationship with this type, you will often feel like a spectator in a one-actor theater, where any pause in applause is perceived as a personal insult. The second orientation is focus on status. These people live in a world of hierarchies, achievements, and social positions. They always know exactly where they stand relative to others, and their main driver is upward mobility. Relationships for them are a status marker. Who I am with tells the world who I am. Every person in their orbit is unconsciously evaluated as a rung on a ladder. Either they help to climb higher, or they drag down. There is no third option. The third orientation is focus on connection. Here, emotional bonds are paramount. Such people seek depth, intimacy, and a sense of complete understanding. They don't need a crowd of admirers. They need one person who sees their soul. They are ready to sacrifice external shine for internal resonance. Superficial social interaction is often torturous for them, like starvation, because their psyche feeds only on sincerity and extreme openness. The fourth orientation is focus on safety. These people organize their lives around stability, predictability, and protection. They will choose a known evil over an unknown good. Calmness is more valuable to them than adventure, and risk is not an opportunity, but a threat. They meticulously build their reality out of proven rituals and habits to create the illusion of an unshakable fortress capable of withstanding the winds of change. The fifth orientation is focus on impressions. These are hunters for novelty, sensations, and pleasure. Routine for them is like a slow death. They seek intensity and vivid colors. They are drawn to anything that makes them feel the here and now moment as sharply as possible. Their energy is cyclical. The brightest flash of enthusiasm from a new hobby or person is inevitably replaced by apathy as soon as the intoxicating effect of novelty disappears. The sixth orientation is focus on control. These people seek order, influence, and power over circumstances. They feel safe only when the helm is in their hands. Chaos or dependence on others' decisions causes them deep anxiety. They often try to plan the future not out of curiosity, but to preemptively rule out any possibility of a surprise, which for them is always equivalent to danger. How do you determine the dominant? Listen to what the person talks about when the topic is not set from the outside. What does she notice in the surrounding world? What makes her eyes light up? The answers will point to the orientation. If in moments of silence she invariably steers the conversation to material goods or other people's status, do not doubt it is through this currency that she will evaluate you. Also, watch for triggers. What causes an acute, disproportionate reaction? A person oriented toward attention will flare up if ignored. One oriented toward status will explode at disrespect. One seeking connection will fall into despair at emotional coldness. Pain is a compass pointing to the core. Carl Jung called the social mask the persona. It is not a fake. It is an interface, a part of us that we create to navigate society. Everyone has a persona. You do, I do. Without it, we could not exist. You cannot walk around with exposed nerves. But in relationships, it is important to understand the function of a specific mask. Some personas broadcast warmth, openness, and harmlessness. This is a signal. I am not dangerous. Love me. Others broadcast weakness, need, and insecurity. This is an invitation to guardianship. A signal. Protect me. Thirds radiate confidence, sexuality, and power. This is a demonstration of high value. A signal. Achieve me. Fourths play at innocence and naivety, awakening protector instincts. And there are masks of inaccessibility, of cold mystery. They create the dynamic of a chase. Often, such deliberate mystery is simply marketing packaging for emptiness, designed to inflate the price of goods that no one would buy without a beautiful wrapper. Key insight. The persona is a tool. It is chosen unconsciously for a task. By recognizing the mask, you will understand what the person is trying to achieve at that moment. The difficulty is that socially flexible people change masks instantly. This is not always manipulation. Often it is high social intelligence. But you must ask yourself, Is this warmth a state of soul or a social dance? Over time, you will learn to taste the difference. But if the persona is what we show, the shadow is what we hide. The shadow is the repository of rejected parts of ourselves. Traits, desires, fears, impulses that do not fit into our ideal image or social norms. We shove them into the basement of the subconscious, lock the door, and throw away the key. We deny their existence, even to ourselves, but they do not disappear. They live underground and control us from the dark. Why is this important to you? Because the shadow always leaks. The repressed breaks out in moments of affect, intoxication, or extreme fatigue. A woman who positions herself as infinitely sweet and compliant may hide a volcano of anger and resentment in her shadow. The Iron Lady may hide a frightened little girl in the basement who craves dependence. The one who shouts about her independence often hides the terror of loneliness. The shadow is not evil in itself. It is simply hidden. Understanding that everyone has this basement makes your view three-dimensional. When evaluating a partner, look not at the shop window, but at what seems to be missing from the warehouse. What does she furiously deny in herself? I never get jealous from the one checking likes. Money is not important to me, from the one constantly discussing prices. Emphatic denial is a direct pointer to the shadow. If you want to understand a person at the deepest level, look for fear. Most actions, especially in relationships, are dictated by fear, which is often not even realized. Fear of being rejected, fear of being used, fear of aging, fear of boredom, fear of absorption. These fears run as a background process, like a hidden virus on a computer. Until you detect this system glitch, your partner's reactions will seem illogical to you, even though they are actually subject to a rigid algorithm of self-defense. And it is the ability to discern this vulnerable code behind the facade of confidence that gives you the real key to managing the situation. A woman demanding constant texts may call it love, but the engine may be panic, fear that she has been forgotten. A woman keeping her distance may call it freedom, but under the hood lies the fear of losing control. When you find the root fear, behavior ceases to be a mystery. It becomes a logical strategy for protection against pain. Root fears are established early and are not cured by simple logic. But once you identify the fear, you know what the person will sacrifice to avoid it. The one who fears being abandoned will sacrifice dignity. The one who fears control will sacrifice intimacy. Fear predicts the sacrifice. Many men are confused by the phenomenon of switching. The same woman is a loving partner today and a cold stranger tomorrow. This is role switching. In a healthy version, it has internal logic and coherence. All versions of the personality are friends with each other. In a problematic version, it looks like splitting, as if different people who don't know each other live in one body. Pay attention to how a person behaves when they think no one important is watching. How does she talk to the taxi driver? How does she react when the waiter mixes up the order? Moments when the scene is off say more than hours of scripted dates. It is in these trifles that the social mask falls off, exposing the true frame of the personality, which cannot be faked by any manipulation. Remember that neglect or cruelty toward useless people is an exact model of how she will treat you when the demo mode of falling in love ends. Psychological patterns are not static. They evolve. Strategies that worked at 20 can become destructive at 40. Getting stuck in the image of the eternal teenager or the offended little girl deprives a person of the tools to solve real crises of maturity. A person's ability to adapt to reality is the main marker of mental health. Healthy adaptation is a software update, revising expectations, finding new meanings, accepting one's mistakes. Unhealthy adaptation is stubbornness, denial of reality, and growing bitterness. You can predict how a woman will age psychologically by watching how she handles small disappointments now. Does she draw conclusions and move on? Or does she look for the guilty and get stuck in resentment? The capacity for honest self-assessment is the most valuable asset in a long-term partner. Beauty fades, circumstances change. Only how a person reacts to change remains. The one who blames the outside world for everything will become unbearable over the years. The one who knows how to adapt will become wiser. Different configurations create different relationship models. There is the extraction model, get the maximum while investing the minimum. This is often a consequence of scarcity thinking. There is the exchange model, fair trade, you give to me, I give to you. It is stable, but can be dry. There is the fusion model, complete dissolution in each other. This gives the high of intimacy but threatens the loss of self. At the same time, it is worth remembering that the predatory extraction model often skillfully masquerades as romantic fusion to lull the donor's vigilance. There is the autonomy model. We are together, but we are separate states. There is no correct model. There is compatibility. Fusion plus autonomy births eternal conflict. Two extractors will destroy each other. You must understand what game you are being offered to play. Refusing to analyze these rules at the beginning of the path is equivalent to signing an onerous contract that you didn't even bother to read. Imagine Jason and Sarah. Jason is a classic autonomy type. To restore his strength, he needs a couple of hours of silence in the garage or an evening with friends. Sarah lives in the fusion model. When Jason gets ready to meet colleagues, Sarah doesn't throw a tantrum. She does something worse. She activates victim mode. She says, "Sure, go. I just hoped we'd watch a movie, but since you find it more interesting there." All evening, Jason receives caring texts from her. "Are you hungry? When are you coming back? I'm sad without you." This is not love. This is a remote leash. Jason returns home not rested, but guilty. For Sarah, his independence is a threat, and for Jason, her intimacy feels like a prison. Pay special attention to patterns of control and chronic resentment. Control can be quiet, soft influence, creating indispensability, managing information. Often such care is woven into a sticky web from which it is impossible to escape without feeling ungrateful. In small doses, it creates coziness and order. In large doses, it suffocates. If your every independent decision is met with sabotage or resentment, this is a red flag. Chronic resentment is even more dangerous. It is a lens through which a person looks at the world. If unprocessed pain from past betrayals lives inside, you will inevitably become a screen for the projection of an old movie. You did nothing, but you are already guilty simply because you are a man. In this distorted optic, even the most innocent gesture can be instantly misinterpreted as a hidden threat or neglect. You cannot heal someone else's resentment with good behavior. If you have been appointed an enemy by class, your actions will be interpreted against you. It is important to understand many complex patterns are echoes of trauma, betrayals, coldness of parents, past abuse. Understanding this replaces judgment with empathy. Complex behavior is not always a bad character. Often these are scars. But understanding does not mean you are obliged to tolerate it. You are not a rehabilitation center. Understanding gives you clarity. These patterns have deep roots and will not change from one conversation. It is important to realize that saving a drowning person who is panicking and drowning the rescuer is not an act of heroism, but meaningless self-destruction. Compassion and self-defense do not contradict each other. You can understand a person's pain and at the same time decide that this relationship does not suit you. But all this knowledge is useless if you do not develop the discipline of an observer within yourself. Most men do not observe, they project. They see what they want to see, painting in the image of a dream, ignoring real data. Your own hunger for intimacy often acts as a traitor, forcing you to ignore red flags for the sake of momentary comfort. True observation takes time. It is the fixing of inconsistencies. It is attention to actions, not words. It is reality testing. The best time for observation is when the person does not know they are being evaluated. Look at her relationships with friends, with parents, with money, with the past. If her stories about best friends are full of poison and hidden rivalry, do not flatter yourself with the hope that behind your back she will speak of you with respect. Life history is the best predictive model. Do not rush. Do not let hormones cloud your eyes. Give yourself time to see the pattern, not the episode. And, lastly, this framework is a mirror. It works both ways. The same structures operate in the male psyche. Understanding others begins with understanding yourself. What is your dominant? What mask do you wear? What do you hide in the shadow? What fears are you driven by? Until you inventory your own vulnerabilities, they will remain open ports for someone else's malicious influence. A man who knows himself is hard to manipulate. He sees when his buttons are being pushed because he knows the schematic of his wiring. He sees the game because he is aware of his own game. The female psyche is not magic and not chaos. It is a system amenable to study. It seems mysterious only to those who look at the facade, unwilling to study the blueprints. Now you have the blueprints. Use them. Practice observation. Test your hypotheses against reality. Clarity is power. Not power over others, but power over your own choice. The ability to decide who is worthy of your time and your life, based on facts, not illusions. This is not cynicism. This is maturity. And it is precisely maturity that is so lacking in the modern world of relationships. Stop living in hopes of what should be and start interacting with what actually is. Reality may be harsh and devoid of romantic flair, but it is the only foundation that will not collapse at the first storm. Only in this way can something real be built. Do you want to learn to read people and see hidden mechanisms of the psyche? Subscribe to the Psycheria channel here. We analyze what others are silent about. Leave your comments and see you in new videos.